What up, my friends? It is Murdering, and today we're going to be talking about the biggest progression walls in Watchers of Realm and how you, as the player, can get over that hump. A lot of information here, going to be important to know. It's going to help pretty much every single player, regardless of where you are, so let's get it. Alright guys, so here we are in Watcher of Realms here, talking about, I guess we should start with campaign, because this is going to pretty much be able to spread to any content you can possibly think of. And what are we talking about? Placements. Placements, placements, placements. This is so important. I cannot stress this enough. And there's a certain way to make out your own placement if you're not just copying a guide, which, to be honest, is no fun. But, I mean, to each their own, right? Everyone can do what they want here. The first bit of advice is going to be, and we're just going to head on to this random stage here. Definitely didn't use these heroes to do it, but let's just click 911 because why not? Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is, what do we do when we start? We look at these arrows here, where they're coming from. Based on this, we can start making an assessment as to where we place our heroes. So we have one coming from the left, we want that. We decide, do we want a ground unit to block this? We can even block it up here. Same thing is going to apply to the top. Do we want another ground unit? Now this is what I always wait for. If they're going to be slow walking units here, I really don't care about them until they get closer. You might be thinking, oh, Murder, don't you want to like put a range to start hitting them? No, because it's going to speed them up, and we want to make choke points. Tip number 1, choke points. You want choke points for pretty much everything in this game here. And now that we only have one, I forget what these are called, like crystal or soul nexus or whatever, we can just guard this. And now we're going to do our damage and game set match here. So I picked this as the first place my melee is going to go here. So from here, I'm going to build off of this. I know that the magic's going to do well, so I'm going to put my Ajax here for a good aura around the entire choke point area where I'm going to be farming down all of these enemies. So we do this. Now I have to consider if I'm going to drop someone like a marksman, where a marksman going to do best. They're not the best against the big monsters we see in front of us because they have high defense and they have low magic resist. But we do know that it's going to be effective against the mobs we can see in the top here. So I'm going to aim this way, and he's going to make very quick work of this. This is where we add our second mage here to assist our arrogance, even though, yeah, he's going to get one shot for sure. So, like, not the greatest example, but we were still able to get the kill here. So this all comes down to, despite me having, like, the worst, yeah, I mean, there's no other way to say it. This is literally the worst set of heroes that I could possibly pick for a stage like this, but things like this are important. Ideally, you don't want to just quit out on a moment like this. You want to make sure you realized everything, and this is where we're going to execute, and he's going to hit with that execute. Perfect. Now, marksmen, again, aren't going to do a lot here. Ideally, I would have wanted some mages, so we can throw our unbuilt, ungeared Shamir this way, and just try to do some respectable damage. Now we have this. Let's go ahead and kill this small ad here. We can replace arrogance. Let's face him. We're going to wait until these two die here. I mean, I'm going to be shocked if I can actually complete this. All right, so we got this going on. We want to replace arrogance here. And we have no healers. I just realized we have not a single healer. So let's just put crash here. I'm really curious as to what I was doing now that I'm looking at this whole thing. So all we're really focusing on is the top of the map. So this is all good. Let's just throw this guy here to get rid of this ad. And now the only real problem we're going to run into are killing these two. Actually, I do not want to waste energy on this, but you guys get my point. This is what a choke point is. This is how you should approach for the first time entering any new content. Approach it all like this. Now, this was a fairly simple, now that I'm realizing it, this was rather simple because there was only one choke point. There are going to be many times, and I'm going to find the right chapter where you need multiple choke points. And sometimes you only need one hero to block a choke point. Now, if I'm saying this and you're like, I already know where he's going with this, you're right. It's going to be the chapter that has the mobs going like underwater. I think it's actually chapter 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, so the mobs go underwater and they transform into even more powerful enemies. So this is where you want multiple choke points. So now let's just go into here. Let's see who I was using. Okay, so it's keeping, for some reason, whatever this setup is that I was doing here. So let's not do that this time. We want at least one healer for this. We have 1, 2 melee. You know what? We want even more melee heroes here. So let's go ahead and use her. We have you. This is fine. Let's just go with this. I'm way over the BP, but you're going to see, and this is going to kind of wrap up my point about choke points. So we're going to wait, see where the first mob's coming from. We know it's coming from the left. So what do? We also see that there's one from the right. So instead of sectioning off just the left section, I'm going to section it off in the middle here. This is going to be my best bang for my buck here. So I kill these two, then I'm waiting for these two, and now in one placement cost, I was able to save that cost for something like this, where I go ahead. Now he's that choke point by himself. Now we have to look up here. We have to say, okay, I already know how this is going to turn out. He's not taking too much damage, so I'm going to have him soak as much as I can. And then we're going to start dropping heroes to make sure there's a tank that's going to be the last kind of resort that we have here. So let's go ahead and use Silas. We're a little bit worried he's going to die, so now we're going to place another ranged on this side to help out. And this is where we have to be very careful here. Now we're going to place a healer first, then a ranged DPS so we can actually do damage. And then we need some type of tank hero. Okay, so I'm going to wait. I know that Elwyn is taking the brunt of the damage here, so I'm simply going to wait here until I can get a defender down paired with Razak, who's going to be the killer on this side. Okay, so we have him, then I'm going to quickly drop him. And now he's going to be the target, and everything is going perfectly smooth. So now Razak's taking care of the top right side. Everything else has their own trap point where I'm kind of keeping them consolidated, and it's working out smoothly. This guy's Abomination a little worrisome as far as dying here, so we're going to heal him up. I do have Elwyn. I understand that's OP. I get it, right? But this is going to be the process to get you through pretty much all of the campaign. I don't think there's a single stage where I didn't use this technique as far as placements and choke points, and it didn't work out in my favor. So as long as you do this, you will have no struggle. And then now we have to talk about gear raids, because gear raids are going to be the second, I guess, major progression wall. A lot of players are kind of scratching their heads like, can I do gear raid 113? Can I do 315? I mean, you guys get the point. And the answer is, you can answer that for yourself. You don't need to get help from anyone else, especially after you watch what I'm about to show you next. So we're going to talk about Gear Raid 1 because it's arguably the hardest Gear Raid. Actually, it is the hardest Gear Raid of all of them. Gear Raid 3, second hardest. Gear Raid 2 was like the easiest by a mile. Okay, so now that we've established that, if you are stuck on, let's say, what's the first stage that gives us red? Stage 13. You want to clear stage 13, and I know you're going to see I have a ton of heroes here. Just don't even worry about that. You have to be thinking to yourself a few things. The first thing is you need to be able to survive. So before you do anything, start off with 2 healers because you have 2 sides of a platform, right? And if you've ever done Gear Raid 1, you know there are these small bugs that explode if you don't kill them. Just assume you're not going to kill them, right? So first we're going to find 2 healers. First healer, we're going to use him. And use Elwyn. If you don't have them, don't worry. It's any 2 healers. I'm just saying, this is how you should start your process. The next thing you want to do is say, what hero type is going to be the best for the content I'm doing in front of me? Now, usually they have a thumbs up. As we can see, from pretty much all of the mages on the page, they have a thumbs up. So, okay, what do I want to do? As many mages as I can muster up here. Some people have 1, some people have 2. You use what you can. So we're going to use Vienna, and let's go with a more common epic if you do choose to buy the pack or you get lucky and pull her, Eona here. So now we have 2 mages. But now what do you do after 2 mages? It's going to really come down to the heroes that you have, right? Because step 1, make sure you can survive whatever the content's going to throw at you, which is why you want healers. Step 2, use a damage type that's strong against what you're fighting, mages. Step 3, fill in with 2 supplementary damage types. If you have 2 more mages, throw them in. If you have someone like a Valkyrie that deals, I believe it's called what? True damage? Vulnerable, increases attack. Oh no, she just does magic damage. Okay, so she's a melee magic damage dealer. So Valkyrie is going to be good. That's kind of what I meant. Just other types of heroes with the same attack type as a mage. So magic, right? So you can 2 more. That's the point here. So if you want to use Valkyrie, you can use Valkyrie. Let's just focus on epics for now, since it's going to be a lot easier to, I guess, digest for the majority of the player base. So we want magic damage dealers. We're not going to say we only want AoE. That is the biggest bait for Gear Raid 1 ever. If you have good single target burst like this Scarecrow guy, when he ults, he's going to kill anything he's ulting. Period. Outside of that, maybe not. But I mean, I like his kit personally. If you know what his kit does, he deals damage. When killing an enemy, he explodes the target pretty much. And strong minion, crazy strong. Every 3 basic attacks, it summons a Scarecrow on a target. And then every 3 basic attacks, it explodes, dealing a ton of damage. So I really like this guy. I think not enough people use him or respect him for Gear Raid 1, but he's very, very strong here. So that's the first supplementary damage type. In the next, you can really go with anyone. I like picking a straight single target hero. So someone like a Brienne, someone like Idril. I always want to say Tauriel. Why do we do that? Because there are often going to be higher health mobs that cannot just be AoE down. And yes, the Scarecrow guy, he does his own job, but I do like just having it in there. And then you can go back afterwards and adjust if you figure out you don't need it. Okay, so we have our 2 mages that complement the fight, 2 healers, 2 supplementary damage dealers. Now, at this point, this is what I do at least. After I have 6 heroes down, I say, who are my lords going to be if you're fortunate enough to have lords? So I kind of just quickly go through and try to pair them up as best as I can. And it's no coincidence that I picked the setup that I picked here. So the first thing is going to be, we're going to move everyone around here. So the top 2 match, and then the top right 2 match. And outside of that, there are no other matching ones. Now you have to say, what's most important to us? Well, of course, we have Vienna, and she is so strong that we want to boost her as much as possible, which also gives Eona a boost. So it's obvious we want a boost for the cultist, I believe, and we're going to use the... I mean, I have Morrigan, so I'm just going to drop her. But the point of this is not to have a Morrigan here. The point of this is to say, this is the Lord bonus that I'm going to use, and this is going to be the hero that I'm not going to use for the fight. Now, if you're blessed and you have a Lord that you've already invested in who's going to have a benefit to you, you always have to keep that in mind. Because remember, there's going to be 2 heroes on every single match you fight that you cannot use at all. Now, they're normally the Lords, because you just use them for the bonus, but some Lords, like Morrigan, have a lot of use outside of that. So I'm not going to be using Morrigan here. She's going to be the one hero that I'm not going to use at all. So now that we've established that, we have all of this space left, and what do? We know we're going to use 1 Lord that's going to be pretty much out of the battle, unless it's a multi-purpose Lord. And then we have 2 more free slots. This is where I like to look for crowd control. Doesn't matter what content, what gear raid, I always look for crowd control. So what do we have for crowd control? Because we don't even care if we're going to meet the damage check yet. These are all things we're going to find down the line. If you try to do everything at once, you're going to be so lost, get frustrated, you're going to swap your gear around way too many times. You have to do everything systematically. Now that I know I want crowd control, easy first pick is going to be Marri. Marri is an amazing, and I can't stress this enough, an amazing CC ability, and she applies vulnerable on targets, which is very powerful. Now that we have 1 CC support, we can choose a buffer like a Laurel. We can choose a buffer like a Dolores if you have, and you're lucky to have them. If you don't have them, you can look for further CC. So an example of further CC that's also a mage is AI, or I, however you want to call it. And for those of you who don't know, she also does an insane amount of damage, because her multipliers are crazy, 680%. Whenever you see a number this high, your eyebrows should be raised just like mine, like this, because that is a massive number, especially for an epic. These are numbers you normally see. Let's just find them, because I know about it offhand. It deals 800% damage, 9 up to 1000% if I fully book this guy. This is the epitome of burst, and also a classic epic that everyone knows about, Maul, with amazing 900% burst, knocks back the target with 2x strength. So as we can see, this is very strong. So now you go to someone like and let's just look at the after the second enhancement, crystal bombs deal AoE damage. This is a passive. This is a 680% passive that happens quite frequently, and it just gets activated, right, with the ult. So for those of you who don't know, I actually have a screenshot of my whatever faction this is, esoteric faction trial stage 12, the new highest one. My out damaged my comet, and she's not even fully promoted. So you're going to be seeing a video on the most underpowered and overlooked epics in the game, and she's going to be on there because her damage is crazy, is the understatement of the year if I actually decide to use that word. So now that we have everything we need, we're looking for our final lord. So with that, we can quickly scan. We have 2 esoteric, 1 infernal. Actually, we have 3 esoteric, and then we have 2 crowns up here. So now we have to determine who do we want. And this is something you can play around with as you're progressing through. We can say, okay, which ones are the damage dealers? Damage dealers are obvious. Esoteric, esoteric, and also we get a healer. So 2 damage dealers, 1 healer if we go for that. If you go for the north, we have a CC and a healer. Okay, so CC and a healer, that's 2. And I guess we can count a CC as well, even though she does deal quite respectable damage here. But it's pretty much settled from here. We want an esoteric lord bonus, and I believe the only one I have is this guy. So we're going to use him. He's going to apply to the 3 of them, and now we're set. We have 2 mages getting buffed by Morrigan that we're not using. We have a CC/AoE damage mage, and then our main, or one of our 2 main healers also getting increased stats from the lord bonus. So this is the process you need to go through when you're progressing through gear raids. If you do this, you will save so much time swapping gear around for one, trying to figure out who goes where and what's going to work and what isn't going to work. Because now that you have a baseline way of approaching things, once you go into the actual fight itself and you're figuring out your placements, making your choke points, kind of like what I talked about earlier, you're not going to have to question what these heroes do. Now me, I've been playing for quite some time, and if you've been playing for a while, you probably know the role of every hero. But if you're new to the game, you have no idea. By starting with this process, you will say, oh, she's my AoE damage dealer. Oh, she's my CC character. Oh, she is my healer, and you will just improve significantly from there. Now, the last bit of advice that I want to give has to do with healer placement. Whenever you're going to drop a healer, never drop your damage dealers first. Always put it on 1x speed, take the healer out, and place him down, and start looking. Say, okay, where can I place this healer to get the most amount of damage dealers in range of them? You're not going to ever drop the healer. You're going to waste time when the first time you're entering anything new and say, let me pre-plan my placements. This is how we do that. We place 1 healer here, although I just said I wasn't going to do that. So you're supposed to recall after. Not literally recall, but just to see what I mean here. So vortex, I put him here. I'm trying to figure out which way I can face him. So obviously I'm going to face him this way, unless I do this, hit this X. Okay, so the X isn't working either. I honestly don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just gonna hit restart and pretend this never even happened here. Okay, that's not what I wanted to do. Again, let's restart one more time. So I place this, I look around, and I say, you know what? I really don't like this. So let's go ahead, hit the X. That time it worked, and that's what we're looking for. So I know I'm gonna place her here. Let's hit this X button, and as far as vortex, I placed them backwards. I know I can cover all of the tiles in front of me, but what if I place him like here? And now I can start reaching onto the forward tile, so I have a choice to make, right? If I have ground units, I'm going to be placing behind the wall, because ground units behind the wall can hit the tile on the wall, which means they're going to hit the enemy units in front of it, which is good. They can't take damage and they're dealing damage. So I have to determine what DPS I'm going to place and where I'm going to place them. Obviously, if I want to double heal aside, I'm sacrificing my backline. What do I mean by the backline? Everything behind Vortex right now that we can see here isn't going to get healed. So it's likely that I'm going to be placing it Not here, but I'm going to be placing it right here in the back, probably tucked in the corner here. So I'm using the smallest amount of useful tiles, but I'm not going to place them again because there's no damage coming out that I have to heal. And this is where I think, okay, I know where my 2 healers are going to go. Now I can just start dropping my AoE damage dealers with how I saw fit here. And now we're going to place our CC. And another thing you do by this is you have a large amount of cost built up from pre-planning things. So we do this, her range huge. So we can do this with the huge range, and she's just going to start popping off here. And we're still taking no damage. You always have to watch for this. Since we are taking no damage, we can just keep dropping damage dealers. Now, if I place this champion here and they break the wall, he does 0 damage. So maybe I want to place him right here, so he only hits what's in front of the wall and after they break the wall. These are all decisions you have to make. Or you can just point him forward like this. So we have that. Now we have our single target damage dealer. Since we know heroes are going to get frozen, I'm actually going to point her to the right instead of like this, because we have all of this free CC area and no one else to deal damage besides I. So I want to capitalize that. We're going to do this. And now we have the 2 spots left for our healer, and we already know where they're going to go. That's the beauty of progressing in this way. There's no questions as far as what am I doing on my own team. Everything is pretty much calculated, and we want to drop them in the corner like we previously determined. And now we're set, right? So we're going to quit this run. That is how I recommend progressing through everything in this game. Be systematic about it, and you will become a better player, and you're going to progress much, much further in this game. So that's going to conclude it for this video. I will have more videos like this with tidbits of information that's going to have a major impact on the player and their account. If you enjoy this content, smash the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I will see you all in the next upload.